Zohran Mamdani, a name that New Yorkers whisper now with a mix of disbelief and fascination. Who is this young man who walked out of the shadows of Queens and claimed the throne of America's most complex city? The story doesn't begin with luxury or privilege. It begins with silence, a silence broken only by the hum of airplanes over a small apartment window in Astoria, where a boy from Uganda stared out and dreamed of changing the world that never noticed him. In a city where power belonged to the old and moneyed, Zohran was invisible, the immigrant child of artists and dreamers. Yet somehow, that invisibility became his weapon. At 7, he landed in New York with his family, carrying nothing but stories from Kampala and the weight of his parents' faith in a better tomorrow. The streets of Queens were loud, merciless, and alive, the kind of place that either breaks you or builds you into something unshakable. Every corner, every subway ride, every face taught him about struggle, race, and survival. He listened, he learned, and he began to see the hidden architecture of injustice that ruled the lives of the people around him, the workers, the renters, the forgotten. This was his classroom long before any university lecture hall. When most kids his age were lost in video games, Zohran was memorizing protest chants, dissecting news headlines, and questioning why power was always out of reach for people who needed it most. His mother, an artist, gave him imagination. His father, a filmmaker, gave him perspective. That combination created something unpredictable, a dreamer who knew how to fight. From Kampala to New York, from silence to speeches, his journey was written in grit. But destiny wasn't about to hand him anything. To make a mark on New York, Zohran had to tear through the walls that guarded its politics. Walls built by billionaires, guarded by media, and polished by generations of privilege. He studied at Bowdoin College, miles away from the chaos of the city that raised him, but even there, his heart remained in New York's crowded trains and working-class neighborhoods. In classrooms filled with theory, he was learning how real systems worked, how the law could bend, how power could disguise itself, and how narratives were built to keep people comfortable. He once said, "The system doesn't need your permission to fail you. It does it by design." Those words would later become the heartbeat of his campaign. But before politics came activism, the restless kind that doesn't ask for applause. Zohran spent nights organizing tenants' rights meetings, helping people fight evictions, and challenging local bureaucrats who thought a brown immigrant kid wouldn't dare to question them. Each confrontation sharpened his resolve. The city was a battlefield, and he was learning its language, policy by policy, lie by lie. The media ignored him at first. Political elites laughed at his name. "Who is Mamdani?" they'd ask, smirking over wine glasses in Manhattan penthouses. But beneath their laughter was fear, the kind of fear that comes when someone begins to rewrite the story you thought you controlled. By the time the 2020s arrived, Zohran was no longer the quiet observer. He was the disruptor, the one who walked into rooms filled with polished politicians and asked the questions they'd trained their whole careers to avoid. His speeches hit differently, less like rehearsed politics and more like raw truth. We don't need to beg for justice. We need to demand it, loud enough that power can't pretend it didn't hear us. Those lines went viral, echoing through social media like wildfire. For the first time, the establishment noticed him, and so did his future enemies. The rise of Zohran Mamdani was not a straight path. It was filled with detours of doubt, rejection, and quiet planning. The world was about to witness something it hadn't seen in decades. A young, Muslim, South Asian-born New Yorker daring to challenge the heart of America's political machine. And as the city that never sleeps prepared for yet another election, no one imagined that the boy from Uganda would soon shake its foundations. But every revolution begins as a rumor, and Zohran Mamdani was about to turn that rumor into reality. Zohran Mamdani's journey from the restless streets of Queens to the echoing marble halls of power didn't happen overnight. It was born from sleepless nights, relentless doubt, and a fire that refused to fade. After returning from Bowdoin College, where he had studied economics and philosophy, he came back to New York with a vision burning in his chest: to decode the system that ruled the lives of millions and rewire it from the inside out. But this wasn't a Hollywood comeback. New York was colder now, sharper, more unforgiving.
The cost of living had skyrocketed, inequality was everywhere, and hope felt like an endangered species. Yet Zohran wasn't there to blend in. He was there to start a storm. He began as an organizer, knocking on doors, standing outside subway stations, and talking to strangers about rent control, healthcare, and transportation. At first, people brushed him off. "You can't change this city," they said. "No one can." But he didn't stop. Every refusal became fuel, every slammed door a reason to knock on another. Slowly, people began to listen. They saw something in him, not a politician in a suit, but a man who looked like them, spoke like them, and refused to lie to them. In community halls filled with fluorescent light and tired faces, his speeches grew electric. "If the system is rigged, then it's our job to unrig it, together." By 2020, the name Zohran Mamdani began to ripple across New York's political circles. He was elected to the New York State Assembly, representing District 36, a small step geographically, but a massive leap in political symbolism. For the first time, the power corridors of the city echoed with a voice that didn't fit the usual mold. He wore sneakers instead of polished shoes, carried a backpack instead of a briefcase, and spoke truths others buried beneath polite speeches. He wasn't there to impress. He was there to disrupt. And that disruption started scaring people. Inside the assembly, older lawmakers whispered about him in corridors. His motions to cap rents, expand transit access, and redirect funds from luxury developers to public housing weren't just political proposals, they were direct hits at decades of comfortable corruption. The city's elite began to notice. Billionaires frowned, landlords panicked, and media headlines tried to twist his words into controversy. But Zohran fought back, not with rage, but with data, compassion, and unflinching confidence. "They call me radical," he said in one fiery interview, "but the real radical idea is pretending inequality is normal." That line trended for days, transforming him from a local politician into a rising national voice. His fearlessness soon caught the attention of two men who defined American power in their own ways, Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Trump mocked him on social media, calling him the socialist from Queens, while Musk dismissed his free transit policy as utopian nonsense. But Zohran didn't flinch. Instead, he fired back with humor. "If caring about the working class makes me a socialist, then I guess New York just found its new brand." His confidence wasn't arrogance, it was armor. Every attack from billionaires only magnified his credibility among ordinary citizens. The public saw a man standing alone against giants and smiling while doing it. Behind the scenes, though, it wasn't easy. The establishment tried to isolate him. Campaign funding dried up. Some media networks refused to air his interviews. Even his allies warned him to tone down his words. But Zohran had already crossed the line of no return. Power doesn't yield to politeness. It yields to pressure. And where the pressure? Those words became his internal compass. He began planning something unthinkable, a run for the mayorship of New York City, the biggest political stage in America outside the White House. His campaign wasn't built in boardrooms. It was built in subway stations, bodegas, street corners, and housing projects. While others relied on corporate donors, Zohran's campaign was powered by teachers, nurses, and delivery workers who believed he could change the game. His rallies felt like music festivals, diverse crowds, real energy, and no teleprompters. He didn't promise miracles. He promised movement. And that difference, that authenticity, began to scare the establishment more than any policy ever could. By mid-2025, polls began to shift. Journalists called him the new face of urban politics. Skeptics called it a temporary hype. But deep down, New Yorkers felt something shifting, a collective heartbeat rising behind one man's impossible dream. The race for mayor was about to begin, and the city that had once ignored Zohran Mamdani was now chanting his name. What no one knew then was that the battle ahead would test every belief he held. The political machine was ready to crush him, the media was sharpening its knives, and the ghosts of power, Trump, Musk, and the billionaire elite were preparing their counterattack.
New York City, the metropolis that never sleeps, never forgives, and never forgets. By the time the 2025 mayoral campaign began, Zohran Mamdani was no longer the quiet outsider from Queens. He had become a political storm no one could ignore. His posters were everywhere, on cracked brick walls in Brooklyn, on street poles in Harlem, glowing through Times Square screens where billion-dollar ads once ruled alone. The city was split between curiosity and chaos. Some called him the people's fighter. Others whispered he was a dangerous dreamer. But in every neighborhood, one question echoed: could this man really change New York? His campaign started with no corporate backing, no billionaire donors, no secret handshakes. What he had was people, thousands of volunteers fueled not by money, but by belief. The kind of belief that turns exhaustion into energy and doubt into defiance. The sound of his rallies became the rhythm of the city. Drums beat, voices rose, and chants of "Mamdani for mayor" filled subway tunnels late into the night. Cameras tried to capture it, but screens couldn't do justice to what was happening on the ground. A movement of workers, students, and immigrants reclaiming their voice in a city long hijacked by power. But the establishment was watching. The first strike came quietly, a smear campaign disguised as news. "Radical socialist threatens NYC's stability," screamed headlines. Anonymous accounts flooded social media with rumors, accusing him of corruption, foreign ties, and hidden agendas. Political commentators mocked his policies as childish idealism. A few laughed, calling him New York's own Che Guevara. Zohran read every word, smiled, and said to his team, "If they're laughing, it means we're winning." But behind that calm smile was a man under siege, sleepless, exhausted, and hunted by systems much larger than himself. The second strike came louder, from the titans of power. Elon Musk, who had long treated New York as his playground for futuristic ambitions, called Zohran's transit plan economic suicide. Trump, trying to rebrand himself as a national power broker, went on live television saying, "This kid's going to destroy New York with socialism. He's dangerous, trust me." Overnight, hashtags turned poisonous, but the backlash backfired. Young voters flooded social media defending him. "If Trump and Musk are against him, he must be doing something right," one viral post said. Zohran didn't respond with anger, he responded with clarity. In debates, he didn't shout, he didn't insult, he spoke like a teacher exposing a lie. "Mr. Trump fears what he can't control," he said calmly. "Mr. Musk fears what he can't buy." The audience erupted. Cameras zoomed in. The headlines flipped overnight. The world finally saw him not just as a rebel, but as a leader. That debate became a turning point, the moment when history realized this wasn't just a campaign, it was a reckoning. As the weeks passed, the campaign trail became a battlefield. Opponents used fear, claiming his rent freeze would bankrupt landlords, his free bus policy would collapse the economy. But Zohran countered with data, compassion, and vision. He visited neighborhoods politicians had forgotten: Chinatown, the Bronx, Little Pakistan, South Jamaica. Everywhere he went, he didn't speak at people, he spoke with them. He sat in tiny delis eating with taxi drivers, walked through construction zones talking to laborers, listened to single mothers outside laundromats about the price of childcare. He said, "They talk about New York as a brand, but New York is a heartbeat, and it belongs to the people who keep it alive." The election tightened. Polls swung violently. The old machine panicked. Hidden money poured into attack ads. Opponents accused him of being anti-American, too Muslim, too foreign. Each insult only made him stronger. "You can call me anything," he told a roaring crowd, "but you can't call me afraid." His words sliced through fear like lightning. For the first time in years, people felt something dangerous: hope. Behind the scenes, his campaign headquarters looked like a war room powered by caffeine and conviction. Maps covered the walls, sticky notes filled with goals and reminders. Volunteers barely slept, yet the mood wasn't despair, it was destiny. Every person knew they were part of something history would remember. Even Hollywood producers started calling it the New York Revolution. Election week arrived like a storm. Rain flooded the streets, the air electric with tension. Reporters swarmed polling stations.
Every network called it the most unpredictable race in New York's modern history. By nightfall, votes began pouring in. Early counts showed him trailing behind the establishment favorite, but then came the neighborhoods they underestimated. Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx. Each district turned red with passion and blue with belief. The numbers flipped. By midnight, Zohran Mamdani, the immigrant boy from Kampala who grew up under fluorescent lights and city noise, was leading by thousands of votes. At 3:17 a.m., the final count came in. The crowd outside City Hall exploded. Fireworks illuminated the sky above the skyline. "Zohran Mamdani, mayor of New York City," reporters shouted. Cameras flashed, and through the chaos, Zohran stood still, eyes closed, breathing slowly. His first words on that stage weren't about power, they were about purpose. This city doesn't belong to money. It belongs to people who never stopped believing in it. The moment felt cinematic, the culmination of decades of struggle compressed into one night. Yet deep down, Zohran knew the fight was only beginning. Winning the election wasn't the victory, transforming the city would be. And behind every cheer, every camera flash, he could already feel the weight of expectations pressing down. Tomorrow, he would face a different kind of battle, not for votes, but for survival, in a system designed to crush hope.
The sun rose over New York City that cold January morning, slicing through the fog and painting the skyline gold. For millions, it was just another day, but for one man, it was destiny taking human form. The name on everyone's lips was Zohran Mamdani, the son of immigrants who had just done the impossible. The cameras followed his every move as he walked toward City Hall for his inauguration. No limousine, no security parade, just a simple stride surrounded by ordinary citizens, the same people who had lifted him from the streets of Queens to the throne of America's greatest city. Journalists whispered, "This is not politics. This is a revolution in motion." The air was electric, yet heavy with expectation. As Zohran stepped up to the podium, thousands gathered under the winter sky holding banners, tears, and phones. His voice broke the silence. "This city taught me everything I know: how to struggle, how to survive, and how to dream. And today, that dream belongs to every one of you." The crowd erupted. But his eyes didn't search for cameras. He looked at the faces: bus drivers, nurses, delivery workers, children on their parents' shoulders, and said softly, "We have won the seat, but the real work begins now." From that moment, the tone was set. Mamdani's New York wasn't going to be built in offices. It would be built in the streets, in subways, in every neighborhood that power had forgotten. But as soon as he sat in the mayor's chair, the city's deep machinery began to stir against him. Billionaires withdrew investments, lobbyists blocked his bills, and corporate media painted his policies as economic disasters. Editorials screamed, "Mamdani's socialist agenda threatens NYC stability." The same forces he had defeated at the ballot box were regrouping in boardrooms, plotting quietly. But Zohran had expected this storm. Instead of fighting behind closed doors, he did something no one saw coming. He brought politics back to the people. He live-streamed cabinet meetings, opened City Hall to public visits, and refused corporate lobbying access. Transparency isn't a slogan, it's a weapon. His moves were radical, raw, and risky. The elite called him naive, but to millions watching online, it was revolutionary. His approval rating skyrocketed. Still, power always fights back harder when it's cornered. His proposal for free city buses was met with outrage from private investors. Real estate magnates threatened to pull funding from housing projects. Even the state government tried to block his rent freeze plan. Yet every obstacle became an opportunity to expose corruption. Zohran faced them not with fury, but with precision. He called live press conferences showing leaked documents, confronted greedy contractors on air, and named names, something few politicians ever dared.
Every battle made him more dangerous to the establishment. But behind his fierce defiance was a man wrestling with exhaustion. He slept barely 4 hours a night, wrote his own speeches, and refused personal security upgrades despite threats. "If I live in fear," he told his advisors, "I can't lead with faith." His humility disarmed even his critics. In a city driven by ego, his quiet conviction became his most powerful weapon. Meanwhile, Trump and Musk continued their attacks. Trump mocked him as the socialist mayor ruining America's showcase city. Musk called his transportation reforms a joke that belongs in kindergarten economics. But Mamdani never took the bait. He smiled and said in one interview, "Let them have their rockets and towers, I'll take the streets and the people." That line went viral overnight. Within hours, murals of Zohran appeared across Queens and Brooklyn, painted by young artists who saw in him not a politician, but a symbol. Proof that courage still had a place in politics. And then came the moment that defined his first year, the Great Transit Strike. Bus and subway workers demanding fair wages and safer working conditions brought the city to a standstill. Instead of ordering police intervention, Mamdani did the unthinkable. He met the workers at dawn, walked into the freezing cold depot, and sat with them on the ground. Cameras rolled as he listened for hours, not as a mayor, but as one of them. By evening, a deal was reached. Wages raised, hours cut, and working conditions improved. No violence, no arrests, no riots. The image of the mayor sitting on the floor with workers went viral across the globe. The headline the next day read, "When Leadership Listens." But victories came at a cost. Threats intensified. Anonymous letters, online harassment, even political allies began turning away, pressured by donors. Yet Zohran didn't retreat. Instead, he doubled down, launching Project New Dawn, a 10-year vision to make housing, education, and healthcare accessible for all. He said they called it impossible. So did every generation before us until someone proved them wrong. That line echoed through the world, from Karachi to Cairo, from London to Los Angeles. And by the end of his second year, New York had changed, not completely, but unmistakably. Bus ridership soared, eviction rates dropped, and civic engagement reached record levels. But perhaps his greatest achievement wasn't policy, it was psychology. He made people believe again, believe that an ordinary citizen could stand against billionaires and still win, believe that compassion wasn't weakness, believe that politics could still serve people, not power. And yet, as the camera fades to black, the narrator's voice would whisper, "Power never sleeps." The same system he fought is only waiting for his first mistake. His legacy isn't written in marble or law. It's written in the hearts of millions who now look at power differently. The city lights that once blinded him now shine because of him. From Kampala's dust to New York's skyline, his journey is proof that courage, when fueled by conviction, can rewrite destiny itself. And as he looked out from his office window one quiet night, the city stretching beneath him, he whispered words that would become immortal. "The future doesn't belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who dare."
If this story inspired you, don't stop here. Watch our next documentary, The Leaders Who Changed the World, and uncover how courage, rebellion, and faith continue to redefine our future. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because stories like this deserve to be remembered.